Okay. So sitting forwards, about a third of your weight. Actually, no, not about a third, but stretch. Try and get it precisely. Think of the weight distribution. 70% back in your hips and buttocks, 30% in your feet. So there's this sense of being supported through the whole of that foundation area. Slightly tilted forwards, but maintaining this upright, open quality we associate very much with Tai Chi. Your attention rests in your body, in your breathing, where the sensations arise. And with your breathing, just notice this automatic quality. You breathe in, we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out. This is it's an automatic cycle, isn't it? And this cycle is one that gets repeated in many different ways, in many different aspects, all the way through the practice. Yin yang, yin yang. Yin yang are generic terms, they're abstract terms by any kind of in any kind of cycle, any kind of movement. You could apply that idea up, down, in, out, expand, contract, whatever. So rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Onto one shoulder, arm. The other side. And the upper part, yes. Your belly. And finally your legs. When we sit back, feet out, we allow the full sort of power, I suppose you could call it, of the pull of gravity. And we find that the chair is the thing that continues to support us. Again, these kind of paired qualities. Your weight dropping back into the chair. Just breathe in anything within your body, especially if you notice any sort of subtle changes, tension draining away, the breathing settling. Notice too that your attention will drift away and come back. Maybe you hear something that I say, you're thinking about that. It's good to do that, but then we realize that we've lost that sense of attentiveness to our bodies. We go into our bodies, maybe we feel a bit tired, maybe we very easily get drowsy, so then our attention has to go out to wake us up and so on. So bring yourself back to the upright position, whatever part of the chair you're comfortable in. So this cycle, this dynamic that exists in the concept of yin yang is central to the way that we move in Tai Chi. You begin to turn your head and you notice on one side there's a contraction, a kind of bunching up of the muscles. On the opposite side, there's an extension, and then we allow the extension to contract, and that opens up the bunched up side, and so on and so forth. We put a limit on it. The limit is point just before it becomes tight. And then, in a way, the cycle of movement takes care of itself. It's like riding a bicycle. You push one pedal down, the other pedal comes up. And then shoulders, into yang, there's an expansive quality in places of the body, yin, yang. In fact, while some parts of the body are expanding, others will already be contracting. So what we're talking about is, if you like, the dominant quality here. We don't want to get too set in there, this is yin, this is yang way of thinking. So this is just to notice how the rhythm and the flow of the movement develop out of this quality of exchange between opposites, going forwards. We're not straining for one or the other. We're not straining to hold our arms up. We're not straining to force them down. Hands down to your sides. And then winding around. And back the other way. Easing forward, your legs filling up. Notice the sensations that you experience when that happens. The legs push back. Now the pillion is back in your hips, lower back, and then they empty and so on. And that's reflected in our upper body. When you go forwards, the upper body can feel full in the front. When you go back, the upper body can feel full in the back. Imagine sort of water flowing forwards and backwards into the front, carries you forwards. And like a lot of things in Tai Chi, as we become aware and are able to identify certain processes, certain movements, then two things can take place. One is they can become smaller. So we notice these things with less and less external movement. And also that the emphasis in how the movement originates changes, that rather than the external movement enabling us to be aware of the internal sensations. Our intent to produce the sensations begins to drive the external movement. Turning. It's not always black and white. It should never be black and white, really. So here, for instance, you go back, hips, lower back, or fall, you go forwards, and actually it's mostly into one leg, the full leg, the empty leg. And in the other direction. And then going around, feeling the change from full to empty as your weight moves from hip to foot to hip to foot to foot, and so on and so forth. This is the focusing of your intent. Your intention is to move around, find a mechanism to enable that. The focusing is through the center of the body, hips, pelvis, waist. Changing direction. Back to this central position and step in. On the other side. Hands down behind your sides. Palms forwards, weight is back. Then bird folds its wings. Angling forwards, the legs fill in, and then the hips fill in. Upper back is closed, opening as your arms rotate. That closes and your chest rotates as your arms turn in the opposite direction. Then change into fisherman castanet. And then rolling the ball. So from the forwards position, going back. and then pigeon spreads its wings. This time, push him away. So from the front position, one more time. And at the end here, open your fingers, turn your hands out. So generally speaking, the changes between one movement and another will occur at those points where yang changes to yin, yin changes to yang. Those are the prime moments, the crossroads, I suppose you can say. Time from the back position, polishing the table. Coming back, turning your hands palm up, expanding, contracting. And wild goose. And parting the clouds. This time, don't move your weight forwards, let your hands drop down. Change. Once your hand has reached the length of your arm, bring your hands in, changing, expanding, contracting. Expanding, contracting. It's time as your hands reach the extension to the sides. Push one foot forward, scooping the sea, looking at the sky. And then your hands twisted and grasping the tiger's ears. Changing over. Scooping the sea. And then changing. Good, and come back to sitting. Okay, so this patterning of yin yang, yin yang, yin yang runs through the entire system. Not always that smoothly, not always that regularly, but we get to be able to recognize the changes. And it's important with Tai Chi not to get stuck in this is a yang movement, this is a yin movement. Mostly yin yang, it isn't worth trying to apply it like that. In some areas, like Chinese medicine, it can be a bit more defined. But even there, in the Yellow Emperor's text of Chinese medicine, the root text of all Chinese medicine, there's a bit on yin yang, and it uses an interesting image. It says, you imagine a mountain next to a river with the sun shining from the south. So the bright side, the yang side, is the south side of the mountain, but the north bank of the river. And the shadow side is the north side of the mountain and the south bank of the river. So you can't say that the mountain is yang, the river is yin, because there's variation. You can't say light is yang, and dark is yin, easily, and so on and so forth. And then if you look more closely, of course, you wouldn't have dark light, dark light. You'd have shadows, you'd have sort of shades of sort of grades of shadows, some darker, some lighter, fading into the light and vice versa, and so on and so forth. So this understanding of yin yang in the way that I've described it is the starting point to give us a kind of model to get a sense for how things work very, very dynamically together. We often think of opposites as being in opposition, but the idea behind yin yang is that there is a flow, there is a harmonious order that isn't hard and set. You know, we're all familiar with the Tai Chi symbol, the yin yang symbol. There's not a hard straight line there, and you know, one half of the circle is divided into, it's usually black or red, the other side is usually white. But in the middle of the black portion, there's a little white dot. In the middle of the white portion, there's a little black dot, because nothing is ever absolute. So we don't want to get too stuck in something. What I've offered is a kind of model to enable us a way in to an understanding, a kind of visceral understanding, if you like, of these kind of terms that we use in Tai Chi. Now, to finish it, I'm going to do a couple of new exercises with you. Will be new to most of you, I think. Hold the ball with your right hand on top, your left hand underneath. And you squeeze your hands together until they nearly touch. And then you let them slide past each other. Lower hand, palm down, upper hand, palm up. Don't put your hands behind your back though. So you're pushing up the ceiling and pushing down the floor. And then turn your hands palm in. Squeezing your hands together and pushing out on the opposite side. So this is called stretching between heaven and earth. There's some variations on it. I tend to do this with a diagonal slant here, which I think works well in the chair. Others would do it straight up and down there, but there are a number of variations. We have this opening quality here, and then closing. One more on each side like this. And then another interesting bit, you come in this time, make a particular point of holding the ball, but when you get to this position, turn your hands palm out, push them away from each other, and then slide them as though they're sliding around the inside of the ball. Turn them palm in, compress the ball a little bit, and then turn, push out, and rotate in the other direction. Just feeling the movement in chest and upper back. Good. And then stay out. Take a few moments just to consider your posture again. the rhythm of your breathing. So with a good posture, our breathing just regulates itself, it softens in breath and out breath, harmonized together. So the yin yang is to an extent dependent upon the structure, supporting the movement, the boundaries to the movement, and so on. And then once again, rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Your arm. The other side. Upper part of the chest. Belly. And your legs. Resting your hands and your heels up. And then circling around, knees circling around. Back in the opposite direction. Okay, and then standing. The feet hip width apart, weight a little bit forwards, hips dropping back, and just a few rounds of this, turning in the middle of your body. Hips sinking down, weight dropping down, slightly forwards in your feet. Arms feeling quite heavy as they swing. Very loose in your shoulders, and just at this speed, with this momentum, just nicely aware of how a small amount of effort here in the middle of the body produces this very effective swing of our hands. Okay, and then just standing. And let's do rooting down, wild goose, part in the clouds as a little set. And again, the changeover will come. Well, it comes at the bottom, but in that at that point where the contraction moves to the expansion. Other movements might change in different places, but that's where it comes here. So you sink down and then rooting down. And then your hands out, wild goose. And part in the clouds. One more round. Shake out. 1 foot forwards. So start with your weight in your back foot and then push forwards, filling and emptying. So we could say, for instance, that the full leg, the one with the weight, was yang, the empty leg was yin. You could argue it was the other way around, actually. Depends just where you're putting the values. So again, don't get stuck on this is yin, this is yang. What we want to be thinking of here is just building an awareness of this dynamic quality and its significance. And we can see this in these exercises because when we do something like Fishman cast and net, it is totally dependent on this cycle working. It takes its energy from that. So we refine this awareness with all sorts of benefits coming out of that. I'm going to try and list them at the moment. And again, it's when we reach that point of change that we start to raise toes and heel. Becoming aware of how this cycle works in our movements, like many things in Tai Chi, begins to develop an awareness of how these things work in our lives. And again, going to the foundation of Chinese medicine, then the kind of underlying philosophy, if you like, is that we're trying to live in harmony with these cycles of yin yang. Stepping in, you can't live in harmony with something that you're not aware of. And then on the other side, raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. Another thing that it encourages you to do is to, in a way, stay with something rather than thinking, now I've got to step. We begin to realize that the moment will occur if we carry on with the process. And this is one of those things that can actually help to stop us rushing. See, a lot of people, when I teach the step in, will rush at it. And then stepping through. And then going back. Check out. And particularly what can happen when we do the stepping is I can go into great detail on one side and transfer the weight and then the toes. And, it's 4 or 5 stages, and people are quite good at it. Even people who can be quite kind of wobbly, unstable, and then so change around. And if there's a group of 10 people in the class, generally for I find a good half will change over and they'll go straight into this. And by the time I've sort of started talking, they're halfway through the exercise. And it's like, you've just missed out all these stages that enabled you to take the step. So we can come back. Oh yeah, there's a pattern that builds up here. And there's a wonderful passage again in the Yellow Emperor's text. I'm paraphrasing, but it says that basically, remember, this comes from 2,000 years old, so it comes from a very agrarian, agricultural society. It says that in the spring we should get up early and be active all day, and you can go to bed late because there's lots of energy around. And then in the summer, maybe moderate it a little bit, but generally, there's a lot to do, and sun rises early, so we get up early, we go to bed when the sun goes down. In the autumn, it begins to slow down, but there's still quite a lot to do. There's still quite a lot of energy around. But in the winter, we get up late, we don't do very much, and we go to bed early. So, which I always think is a charming idea, but it's pointing. It's pointing that living with the seasons that have this massive effect on the community. So again, you find these ideas in all sorts of ways working through Chinese culture, and this is the culture that these exercises, these practices have emerged from. So they're just inherently part of it. So have your right foot forwards and start as always with fisherman cast the net. As you get more experience with this, we can be a little bit more nuanced about an awareness of the changeover. I'm going to exaggerate this, just so you've got an idea of what I'm talking about. I go forwards, I'm settling in the front leg. Let's call that yang. And it's yang, and the arms are going forwards and they're yang. But by the time my arms swing past, still a little bit of movement forwards, I'm already going back. So this is the grey area, the penumbra between the black shadow and the white light. So it's a little bit fuzzy at the edges, but what it wouldn't be is this. You're not struggling with it. Yin yang are expressed in the circle, not in the square. Sit back and turn. Going into this sideways figure of eight movement. Okay. Fisherman cast a net on the other side. And then changing. And then beginning to take the step. If you haven't done so already, you can change direction. And bring everything down. Good. Go back to your chair. So the start of the classes are always a bit reflective. They don't go straight into sort of complex ideas and exercises. And the end of the class, we embrace time and return to the mountain. It's also quite reflective. Yin, to yang, to yin, once again, in terms of a kind of cycle. So hands down to your sides, and then embrace tiger, return to mountain. And rest. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody.